Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Hands-On Labs webinar this afternoon. My name is Lee McKenney. I'm the marketing manager for Hands-On Labs. And our presenters this afternoon are going to talk to you about how easy it is to teach online science courses using HOL Cloud and the HOL Lab Pack Science Kits. Our three presenters today are Dr. Dwayne Cagle of Hands-On Labs, our resident science expert and curriculum developer. We have Professor Mark LaBella from Ocean County College, and we have Dr. James Brown, who is widely renowned as the godfather of online science because he has been doing it for so very long. So without further delay, I'm going to hand off to Jim, and he's going to tell you about all the stuff you really came to hear. Jim, it's all yours.
Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. People always made fun of my name being James Brown, so that, I got known as the godfather of online science. I enjoyed it. I started out basically as the Dean of Science, Engineering, Health Sciences, and Human Performance at Ocean County College. And I don't know if you've seen that little show on TV, Jersey Shore. Well, that was our neck of the woods there. A lot of our students actually were the extras on that show. But what we did is we started out with teaching science totally online, basically going back to 2002. And I've been doing it ever since, and I absolutely love it. And I do it full time now. I did step down as dean, and now I teach for several places totally online. Where this all started, we went for a grant with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, $500,000 to put our nursing program online. Everything except the clinical. The clinical was going to be taught one day a week, and the rest, everything else was going to be taught totally online. And so we got the grant, but our big problem was how we were going to handle science as far as the labs go. And the big question, and still is, when you go to any of the conferences and all the rest, you have people who are virtual versus hands-on labs. Versus a hands-on, there are several, ones that offer a hands-on arrangement. But the transferability on this was the big issue. And early on, most schools, if you had a virtual lab, they weren't interested in transferring the students. It had to be some kind of a hands-on arrangement. We were using VH Dissector Pro at that time, and this was based on the Visible Human project. They actually used cadavers that they cut up and all the rest. And we actually had that on our computers at Ocean County College, which was a help. But the simulated laboratories, this is one from LearnSmart from McGraw-Hill. And I use this extensively at, now I'll come back with the university in a bit, but I found that the students really didn't care for this as much. So we needed a whole different approach because we had to teach these students. We had to have all the lab sciences so they could be taught totally online. Well, we have a visionary president. He's still there, Dr. John Larson, and he was fantastic. Came back from a conference, he says, "Hey, Jim, I just saw this. There's a place called Hands-On Labs, and they're in Colorado, and they've got, for a number of different laboratories, they've got, I think, exactly what we need." It's funny about John, because here's the vision he has for the university. Ocean County College will be the boldest, most creative, most innovative, student-centered college in America. By pioneering community college education internationally, we will be a prototype for global education. That has come true. I have seen that from when I was there, and today that's indeed what's going on. So John came back, and I want to say a big thanks to Dr. Larson's because he's the one who said, "Hey, try out these hands-on labs. They have these lab packs, and that might be our answer," and it was. We were running out of space with our anatomy and physiology lab. We were actually running labs till 10 o'clock at night, and we actually pushed it. So some labs we were starting at 6 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays, and we actually started running them on Sundays. And by having the hands-on labs come in where we could teach everything totally online for laboratory science, it really helped us. We really didn't, although they built a new building now, they didn't have to build one back then. Now, selling the science department, it was tough. And it's just any type of change. It's really, you know, your early adapters are the ones that help you get that through. And this is where Professor Mark LaBella comes in, because he took it from there, helped sell it to all the science faculty. It was a difficult sell, but one by one they came on. And I think to this day, there's only one faculty member who didn't convert. But all the rest of them, especially when they found out, hey, I can teach this totally online and have my summers at the Jersey Shore enjoying myself. I could actually teach it sitting there with my computer on the beach. So Mark, I'd have to say, came in, early adopter, and helped convert all of the science, well, except one, convert them to using this. So thank you, Mark, for doing this. So we had what was called the 1 day a week nursing program, and now it's the online on-site nursing program. And it made Ocean County College the powerhouse for the East Coast. Has 14 fully online courses. And what's really cool, they come 1 day a week, and they get their clinical. The rest is totally online. We had students coming in from New York City and Philadelphia coming in for the day just to get their clinical, and then they go back and take it everything else online. I have, as I say, I teach at a few different places now. This is one we've just put up, anatomy and physiology there, totally online. The CUNY, the School of Professional Studies, and they're rated 16th nationally as far as bachelor's programs taught totally online. As far as where I'm teaching now, oh, that's Gwynedd Mercy University. There's CUNY, and originally Ocean County College. So that's teaching anatomy and physiology 1 and 2. Some things I have in my courses that really help. It's what they call the ABCs of high quality online discussions. A is acknowledge the student's input. B is build on the student's ideas. And C is conclude with a focused follow-up question at the end of the week for the class. Works beautifully, it really does. The other thing is we put a lot of cool videos in. I love, especially Khan Academy. In science, you can't beat their videos. It's excellent. And of course, here's your lab pack for human biology. And this, it's a really nice hands-on arrangement. And what's cool, like the microscope you use for anatomy and physiology 1 and 2, you can, by adding a oil immersion lens to that, you can use it for microbiology. So you get 3 courses out of that, which is really cool. Here's just dissecting a fetal pig. And the thing is, this is what the students would do in most universities and colleges across the United States. Here, they're doing it themselves. They get the lab pack come in, it has everything they need. My area of expertise is microbiology, and I was the director of microbiology for Roche, and then I was assistant commissioner of health for the New Jersey State Department of Health, overseeing the public health and environmental lab. So microbiology was my thing. Now I'm teaching at Colorado Christian University, the University of Alaska at Fairbanks, and also coming on board University of New England. So talk about spreading across the United States there. But with the microbiology, it really has worked out well. One thing we do, the whole thing, when you're teaching online and science, we make the students take pictures. And that way we can see, and you know what, it's so easy to shoot it right through the microscope. We can see what they're seeing. Here they're saying yeast-like budding cells. They send it to us, and this way we know that they're really doing it. Pictures of them, you know, here's a positive methyl red test, and it's working out the cultures just the way they would in a hospital. So if you look at a typical hospital, you're going to see and they're all biosafety level 1 organisms, so they're not harmful, but they've got to be careful. Here's students getting involved in the family project. What's really cool, I've got 6 kids. Now, my youngest is 14 now, but all of them, they use the microscopes. They took them into school where they were. It was a lot of fun. Everybody got involved in it. They totally loved it. Here's the the clinical laboratory here, and this is typical of what you'd find in a hospital. If they're starting out looking at it under the microscope, the bacterial morphology, they're learning how to isolate, do the differential staining, such as your gram stain, methyl red, Voges-Proskauer test, that the carbohydrate fermentation, and then they end up with the antibiotic sensitivity. And here's students taking pictures. I can actually see the two different organisms here. I can send that back to the student and say, hey, you've got two organisms there. The Kirby-Bauer susceptibility test. After they're done identifying the organism, this is what they do in the hospital. Of course, this is the older way of doing it, but still, they can see what antibiotic works. Now, as far as when we started out, we had to have some data showing that, hey, this was just every bit as good, and especially with the nursing students. So what we did here is we took the students who were, this is ATI, and we looked at it, the 1 day a week students versus the traditional cohorts, and on the testing, 97th percentile nationwide, that 1 day a week nursing program. So this helped shut a lot of people up. The other thing we did is we had the same professor, this was me, I was teaching General Biology 1 here, and we brought them into Ocean County College to actually take the lab practical there. And sure enough, the ones taking it online outperformed the ones who were taking it face-to-face. Go figure. I think what happened, most people who were taking it online had to take it that way. They were working full-time, they were single parents, stuff like that, so they were highly motivated. And that's very true of what you'll find. So the Anatomy and Physiology, the Human Anatomy and Physiology Society, we had them are on campus and online took it. We brought them in to take the HAPS exam, and sure enough, pretty much mutual results there. So this convinced a lot of the faculty that what we're doing is good. Now, the other thing is we had deans, like our students would transfer out of Ocean County College to an upper division university. And what happened is so many of them would call up and say, hey, excuse me, we want to see, they said they took this online. Can you explain it to us? Well, when we showed them that they actually had a hands-on lab experience, 91% of the 78 colleges and deans I spoke to would accept a hands-on. Where only at that time, 21% would accept virtual labs and transfer, and 6% at that time said they wouldn't accept any online labs and transfer, period. Things have changed now. And here's some tips, just some very quick tips that work for me. The one is, if your students don't get in right away, what I found is call them up on the phone. That first 48 hours is critical. And, you know, if they're having problems with technology, many times you call them on the phone, you walk them through it. And then I found out later on, like if they're having trouble with the lab, I tell them, hey, give me a call. Now, my students in Alaska, there's 4 hours difference. I tell them, give me a call. We'll work through it. And that way it saves you 100,000 emails. And we have an icebreaker here. This is my kids when they were a little bit younger here. I've got 6 altogether now, 3 adopted, 3 biological. But this creates an online community. So they have that icebreaker, they introduce themselves, their families, that sort of things. They get started. The other thing I do is I use a video camera to help out, maybe about 2 minutes long, and that's about it. Because if you think of a commercial on TV, you're talking 18 seconds, 20 seconds for your typical commercial. So you want something short, sweet, and to the point. Just focus on one thing, and you can make a bunch of different videos, but make them, don't go longer than 2 minutes, you lose them. Like a lot of people tape their lectures. Well, let me tell you, you got a lot of sleeping students at the end of that. The other thing I absolutely loved, and this one, it's soft chalk. Here you can actually build in all these interactive content, and it's so cool to do, easy to do. I would teach faculty members in 2 hours how to do this. I love it, and it's in all my courses. The other thing is I'd have it Skype, and now they got a whole bunch of other things now that are very similar, where students, I would use this for students who are in Europe and that kind of thing. I could sit there, show them how to use a oil immersion lens on a microscope. And then, okay, Ocean County College, the cool thing about us, we had Lakehurst Naval Air Station near us, McGuire Air Force Base, and Camp Kilmer. And what they did is they pulled the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy all together in one giant base now. But what we did, we had students who were taking this, who were military, and we found out it was so easy to get the lab pack shipped to the military. And here I had some students on the USS George Washington. I thought that was so cool, and they're doing their microbiology there. Again, I had this one's students in Afghanistan, and many times they say to you, you know, it's moments of sheer terror followed by weeks of absolute boredom. And in that weeks of absolute boredom, they're taking courses, they're getting associate's degrees, bachelor's degrees. It's really cool. I was just speaking in Scotland last summer. That's me in the kilt there. My parents were from Scotland and Ireland, the family, but I love talking about it. But this was really, it was talking about open online laboratory science courses to the world community. The world community, so many students wanted to come to the United States and get their degrees here. Well, guess what? That's not as easy as it used to be. It's very restrictive now. And the key is the one course, these laboratory science courses, were the thing stopping a lot of places from offering their bachelor's degree totally online. In the it's taught one of our universities in the United States, but the students are coming from all over the world to take it. So students now, they come, they can get a whole degree, bachelor's degree, what have you, without ever having to enter the United States. And this is a critical component. When I went to that's what they were talking about at this a year ago, that this was such a critical thing, having that hands-on lab experience. It opened it up for these bachelor's degrees to the whole world community. And sure enough, there's 250 plus experiments. It's used by 33% of the colleges in the United States. Over 100 countries worldwide use it. My students are from all over the place, 11 different science disciplines. So anyhow, I'd like to turn this over now, and Mark's going to take over. And what was really cool, Mark took over. I left as dean, and I went to teach all over the place because we had adopted the 3 special needs children. And Mark really picked it up and has really taken Ocean County College to really a world community now. It's really cool. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, I'm sharing my screen. You should see a picture of me, everybody. Hello, thank you for coming to this webinar. That's my wife, Jane, and one of my 3 dogs, Holly. Yes, Jim was the one who hired me back in 2006 to take over and to develop some of these online courses. I've got about 34 years worth of teaching experience at the college level. I've been teaching online since 1999. Actually, I was teaching with correspondence courses at Felician University up in Lodi, New Jersey, where we the first one that we launched in 2007 was Bio 130, which is our Human Anatomy and Physiology 1. And yeah, these courses were being taught the way Jim described them, but Jim and John Larson wanted them to go completely online with hands-on labs, and that's how we made the relationship with hands-on labs. You can see by 2010, Bio 1, Bio 2, Microbiology, Chemistry 1 and 2, Physics, they were all added. I developed A&P 1, A&P 2, General Bio 1, and General Bio 2. So you can see now we have an introduction, we have ecology. You can read this. Forensic science we have for our criminal justice students, and we have calculus-based physics 1 and 2. So literally, and this has been the case for a while, you can actually earn your associate's degree entirely online, because we also offer about 100 other courses in disciplines that are completely online, including language courses. So we have a really deep e-learning department. And I migrated over from the science department to e-learning, so I'm a full-time e-learning professor. I teach completely online now, and I teach science courses online. The other piece is that along the way, we were Quality Matters recognized. I am a Quality Matters peer reviewer, but our A&P 1 and our General Bio 1 were recognized. You can also see in some of these that Jim and I presented at together, Sloan, ACT, USDLA, I presented with the founders of Hands-On Labs at one of these conferences. We had a course design award from McGraw-Hill because we had a relationship with them for a while, and now we have this corporate partnership with Kaiser Permanente, which basically allows us to offer not only science courses, but liberal arts courses to 55,000 of their employees who are eligible for a grant to take online courses and get their associates online and then transfer into a 4-year. So we've done a lot. So how do we do this? Complete online. Well, and again, we don't have the time because Dwayne is going to pick this up about the cloud, but we have tailored lecture content that is aligned with face-to-face. We have course discussions, which, to add to Jim's ABCs of online learning, discussions are very important for engaging students. We have writing assignments, we have exams and quizzes, and of course we have the laboratories. And the laboratories all revolve around the Hands-On Labs Cloud and the lab kits. So the first thing I want to talk about is the lab kit, because almost every single course, as far as I can tell, except for, if I can remember, I think maybe one course is still in the development stages, all use either all their labs from a lab kit or some virtual, some lab kit. And the bottom line is it does create a laboratory experience that they don't have in a face-to-face laboratory. For example, in a face-to-face laboratory, they see a microscope slide maybe once, maybe twice. Maybe they get 5 minutes worth of dissection if they're working with 6 people on a groove on a cat or a fetal pig. This is in their house. They can look at those microscope slides anytime they want to. They can come back to a dissection. They do blood typing exercises. So for the most part, they have an immersion in the laboratory experience they would not get in a face-to-face class. Okay. The other piece, and then Dwayne will talk more about this, is the cloud. The cloud has developed over the years to become a course within a course, and literally the cloud gives students not only a laboratory experience, but also a didactic experience that sort of matches what we're teaching in the lecture content. So it literally enhances and deepens their knowledge about what we're teaching in the lecture component of the course, but also allows them to experience the lab piece and generate a lab report. Now, just as a point of interest, our A&P classes do not require lab reports in our face-to-face classes. We do require lab reports here. Some of them are 14 pages long. Okay, the lab kit. Okay, so lab kit and microscope. Some of our courses have gone to a virtual scope, but anatomy and physiology and microbiology still use physical scopes with physical slides because we feel, and also HAPS feels that way. It's very important that we have them use the scope. You can see students go anywhere from 9 to 14 labs, and that's dependent upon the course itself. I've got 9 in my A&P class, but some of the chem classes use 14 labs. So, okay, and there's another shot of the kit. I think that's the same shot that Jim used. That's the human bio kit, which is very similar to the A&P kit, but they're customized by Hands-On Labs to meet our curriculum. So we don't have labs in there that we don't use. We have labs that match the labs that are done in our face-to-face classes, piece by piece by piece. So if a student went from a Hands-On Labs kit into the classroom, they wouldn't notice the difference, except maybe it's for the fact that it's different brand names. Otherwise, it's exactly the same. And we did that so that we would have the alignment between the face-to-face and the online in the lab part. Okay, so now you can see the lab manual. That's changed. This is an older slide, as I think I mentioned yesterday. The lab manual is gone. The cloud replaces all that, and it's got information, it's got questions, it's got lecture content, and it dovetails in with the experiments that the students are doing. Okay, and the lab report templates have now migrated to the cloud, so that when the student is done with the actual laboratory, they generate a PDF of the lab report, which they then send to us, and we grade it in whatever LMS we're using, and that alone adds a dimension that some of our other students don't see. Okay, so here's an example. This is something that you would find in my AMP1 kit. There's a fetal pig. We used to use cats, but there's obviously a shortage of cats now. A miniature skeleton that Dwayne will talk about, it's about 3 feet tall, but very detailed, and a sheep spring. So we spend time doing muscles and nerves with the fetal pig. We use the sheep brain for the central nervous system. And students are a little shocked when they get the kit, although I let them know it's in there. But once they get going with it, it is a family affair. I have students send selfies of themselves with their kids while watching them dissect the fetal pigs or the brain or working with the skeleton. All right. Now, this is an example. This is a cat. We don't use cats anymore because of the availability issues. We've gone to fetal pigs, as at many places, including Boston University. And you can see that they're working with the leg muscles. They're required to submit selfies, so we know that they're actually doing the lab. And of course, this is a picture of a specific leg muscle. But here's a picture of the student actually dissecting probably one of the muscles of the neck. Okay. And if they don't submit selfies, they don't get credit for the lab because of the fact that we want to see them doing the lab. And of course, with academic dishonesty at all levels, including face-to-face, we want to make sure that they are doing what they're doing. Okay, there's another shot. That's a picture just to show you that's the transverse jugular. You've got some arteries there. The mass of the muscles are peeled away. So now what about the cloud? And again, Dwayne, I'm going to sort of breeze through this because Dwayne's going to spend more time on this, and I want to give him time to do that. For the most part, the cloud is a learning experience. It's not just a lab; it's a learning experience that utilizes the lab, but it complements the didactic component of the course to the point where you really don't know that when you're looking at the information that the stuff is different. It sort of adds on to what they're learning in the lecture, and it also gives them specific questions and steps by which they actually develop the lab and do the lab. In my General Bio 1 class, there's a lab where they're doing macromolecules and it explains very carefully starches and proteins, and then they ask questions about it, and then they actually have to do the starch and protein identification and so forth. So it really is an extension of our LMS, and Wayne will talk about this, but for the most part, you can set it up so that it's seamless. It's a single sign-on, so you literally just move from one place to the other, the Gradebook, and automatically download things into the Gradebook for the LMS. By the way, we use Canvas. So, all right, that's just a shot of one of the menus of the cloud, and Dwayne will go through those components, but it's broken up into a very logical sequence the way they would be doing that in the classroom. Okay, here's another example. This is actually a little piece of the cloud showing before you proceed. There's the detailed learning objectives. There's a nice breakdown of time, and Dwayne will talk more about why that's important. But literally, everything is laid out for the student, so the student knows exactly what to do step by step by step by step. Okay? There's analytics in the cloud, which means it tells you a whole bunch of statistics about what's going on. This is just one page, and Dwayne, again, will talk about this. But you can see at the bottom, those green dots indicate completed labs. It talks about time on task for each of the modules that they would do in the lab, whatever the lab lessons are. It goes through, here's the time on the right-hand side. On the left, you can see how much time they spend in exploration, evaluation, lesson completed. And you can do this for the module, or you can do this for the student. So it's very detailed analytics. Okay. There's a shot of a sample lab report that this is actually, it's not a selfie, but it's actually from the axial and appendicular skeleton. And you can see there's the name of the student behind there. There's a nice labeling tool in the cloud that allows you to label and then refer to a key. That's the skeleton. You can see, it's very detailed. Okay. So, why are our courses successful? Well, I can tell you right now, having done this and having taught it, I taught online for a year, and I've taught classes that didn't have a hands-on lab. That lab kits beat out virtual labs. Virtual labs are great at some level. They're great as a supplement, but the actual hands-on experience cannot be replaced. And of course, HAPS believes that to this day, and that's one of the reasons why they like our courses. But you can see 11 years out, we know our courses really work. We have a lower attrition rate. Jim showed you some data. In our face-to-face courses, we have a lower failure rate, partly because students know that they have to be in these classes and they have to spend time here. It's not just check in and every once in a while and do something. So it's sort of a self-selection, but it's still, it's still a shock to some of the students when they realize how hard or how rigorous it is. There's a similar overall class average when compared to face-to-face classes. And the transferability rate, Jim had mentioned that at one point it was transferable to 73. It's over 300 now. We have 300 different institutions, including Penn State, who sends students our way to take AMP1 as a prereq for their OT and their PT courses. And then they bring them back, and there's an advisor there that knows that we do a great job with AMP1 and 2. So that advisor sends them out, and they come back, and then they are eligible to get into those two programs. You can also see that, and Jim went through this, there was no statistically significant difference between the online students and the face-to-face students, and we did this a couple of times. So we did it with more even sample sizes for the first couple of years, and nothing changed. And that's good, because I'd rather see no significant difference than a higher score in the online classes, just because you don't want to say, well, they're easier. This shows that they're pretty much the same in terms of the scoring. Okay, so what are some reasons we think it's great? Well, first of all, everything is integrated. Jen mentioned that. The assignments, the assessments, the labs, everything is integrated into a modular format, so that when they're doing the axial and appendicular skeleton, they have a quiz on it, then they have a writing assignment on it, then they have to do a discussion about it. The most important thing I have found over the years, because I do observe other instructors, is that you need to be a good facilitator. You need to get back to your students immediately. You need to do that within 24 to 48 hours. When a student sends me an email, it comes on my phone immediately, so I know that the student sent me an email through Canvas. I have faculty that don't respond to students for weeks, and I get thank yous if they're actually responding within 24 hours. And we found that 90% of the success of students really comes from the proactive facilitation of the course. And of course, the cloud, the cloud and the lab, and it's aggressively integrated between the two levels. And that's really important because they see the cloud all the time. They hear the cloud all the time. It's always there. It's always referred to someplace along the line in terms of what you're doing in the lab. So this way they know they always have to go back to that. They have a lab practical, so they've got to go back and look at their lab reports. So it's been working really well. Okay. So if anybody has any questions, we can do it here, or you can send an email to me. That's my email at Ocean. And I thank you for listening.
Wonderful. We don't have any questions at the moment, so I'm going to hand off to Dwayne and let him begin his portion.
Well, thank you, Lee, and thank you, Jim and Mark. So today for my portion, I just want to briefly cover the lab manual portion of our kits, i.e. what we call HOL Cloud, which, as you're about to see, is a very sophisticated online curriculum delivery system. Jim and Mark have done a wonderful job of talking about the difference that our materials, both our physical kits and our curriculum, have made in their programs at various institutions. But what I want to really focus on is our curriculum and how it's hosted and delivered to the student. First and foremost, we've made our curriculum mobile. It's imperative for today's online students that they have easy access to their coursework, meaning it needs to be mobile device compatible, whether that device be a smartphone, a tablet, or an iPad. What type of disciplines do we support with our curriculum and our kits? Well, we're your one-stop shop for all laboratory science disciplines. So whether you offer anatomy, physiology, biology, chemistry, environmental science, forensics, geology, micro, or physics, we can supply you with both physical materials and sophisticated lab manuals for your online courses. We also offer customization and allow you to mix and match between disciplines to best meet the needs of your class and your students. We've already gone and talked about the materials, so I'm not really going to focus on this in my part of today's presentation, but there gives you an example of an anatomy and physiology kit. But most important, our materials are science grade, and they're designed for students to safely conduct hands-on experiments in their homes or offices. In conjunction with our physical materials, we do provide 100% liability coverage for your students using our materials. So neither you personally nor your institution are liable should a student incur an injury from conducting an experiment with our materials. Having said that, though, we're very proud to announce that in over 2 decades, we are claim-free from users, meaning no one has injured themselves using our physical materials. All right, so now let's talk about our lab manual and HOL Cloud. Again, we've made it mobile. It's imperative that students be able to access their laboratory content at any time, any place, on any device. Studies show that students who can easily engage with their coursework are going to perform better in their class and have lower drop rates. So how does our HOL Cloud and curriculum support our physical kits? Well, first and foremost, we make it interactive for the student, and we provide the student upfront with any training resources they need to be successful with their lessons. So the first time the student logs onto our platform, they see the page or the view you're seeing on this laptop computer screen. And they have a couple of prerequisites that they need to complete before beginning any experiments with the physical materials in their kit. And those lessons are titled Getting Started, which makes sure the student knows all of the features of the HOL Cloud platform, and Laboratory Safety, making sure the student is aware of the standard safety protocols they are expected to follow when conducting experiments, not unlike the information you would cover in your face-to-face laboratory sections. So here's how we design a typical HOL lesson. Every lesson is divided into 3 sections. Those are labeled exploration, experimentation, and evaluation. You may recognize these as part of the 5 E's of science learning. So within our laboratory curriculum, we provide you and your students with 3 of those 5 E's. Before a student actually begins any activities, they encounter the estimated completion times for each section. This is imperative, and one of the biggest challenges we have found of an online science laboratory student is allocating the proper amount of time in their busy schedule to completing their laboratory exercises. Keep in mind, these students aren't coming to campus 1 or 2 days a week at a predetermined time to complete their experiments. It's up to them to make room in their busy schedules between work and family duties to get these experiments complete. In general, our exploration sections take about 30 minutes. And in the exploration section, as you're about to see, is all the background information the student needs to understand before beginning the procedures. The procedures are covered in the experimentation section. In general, the student's going to spend about 3 hours active time completing the procedures and answering the questions and completing the data tables. Some lessons, however, do have incubation periods, as you see in this example, where a student may need to set things up, 1 or 2 days in advance before they're able to record their data. And then lastly, a student is going to spend about 30 minutes on the final exam for each of our lessons, and that's titled Evaluation, and we'll see an example of that momentarily. Next, as Mark already pointed out, we do provide the student with very detailed learning objectives for each section. You'll recognize that the objectives for this exploration section contain verbs like discuss, describe, and explain. These are modeled after Bloom's taxonomy. The first activity a student encounters in the exploration section is a series of questions labeled Test Your Knowledge. These questions are formative assessments designed to test the student's inbound knowledge of the subject matter covered in the laboratory. You'll see that once a student makes their selections, they're provided with immediate feedback so they can easily identify any knowledge gaps that may exist. These activities are always drag and drop by nature. So whether they're ordering a series of terms, whether they involve matching or even labeling images, studies have shown that when a student actually moves an answer to a new location, it's a much more engaging experience than just simply clicking A, B, or C. Once a student completes the Test Your Knowledge section, they are ready to encounter what we would traditionally call the background of the experiment. And within this background section, we design it with very manageable blocks of text that introduce all important terms a student should understand before beginning the experiment. Those terms are always in bold. And each section of text is always accompanied by a visual representation of that topic, whether in this case it be a labeled diagram or a high-quality photograph or any other type of graphic representation. So students can visually relate to the information as it's being presented. At the bottom of each of the exploration pages, the student will encounter 1 or more question time questions. These are multiple choice in nature, and they're designed to test a student's comprehension of the information that was just provided on that page. Again, the student's provided with immediate feedback so they can identify any concepts they don't yet understand. Once a student completes the background, i.e. exploration section, and answers all those questions, they're ready to begin the experiment. Now, we design our experiment procedures very purposefully. Challenge number 1, just ahead of time allocations that all online laboratory students have, is being able to understand what they need to do and how to do it without having their instructor come over and answer questions for them. These students aren't in a face-to-face environment. They can't raise their hand and have their lab instructor walk over and explain to them how to pipette solution into a graduated cylinder, for example. So it's imperative that we provide those students with not only images and clearly written steps, but also video explanations of standard laboratory procedures. So here you see there's an embedded video of how to set up and use a microscope. Here are very detailed photographs of how to open a chemical pipette, and again, how to pipette solution, in this instance, into a test tube. At the bottom of each procedural page, a student will see a tab labeled Data. And when they click on that, they are automatically provided with all the data tables for that set of procedures. So they can easily then input their observations and measurements. This is very, very important for mobility device using students. This prevents them from having to toggle between windows, which can be quite cumbersome, as you know, on a tablet or a smartphone. So with just the tap of their finger, they can call up this data table, enter their work, tap it a second time, it's minimized, and they're back to the instructions that they were just viewing for their procedures. All work that a student inputs into these data tables is auto-saved, as you can see by that green saved notification there. So if a student loses connectivity for any reason, they have not lost their work. We also provide image upload panels for students. As Mark and Jim already referenced, they require their students to provide photographic proof that they've conducted the experiment, and we include those image panels right in those data tabs. So a student can easily take a photo, drag and drop that file directly into their data table, and then their instructor can view it. And then lastly, at the bottom of each procedural page, a student will encounter several open-ended questions. And these questions are specifically designed for them to relate the information in their data or their observations they've produced from conducting their procedures, relate that information to the topics being addressed in the laboratory. These are always short answer questions. They are never matching or multiple choice, because this gives the students the opportunity to demonstrate their complete understanding of the subject matter to their instructor. The final section is the evaluation, and as we mentioned, it serves as a final exam for each lesson. It consists of a dozen or more multiple choice questions that span the whole breadth of the laboratory experience, from the background section to the procedures and the results. Again, students are provided with immediate feedback after submitting their answers. So once again, they are made aware of any information they did not completely understand. Also, they're provided with detailed remediation in this instance, as you can see in that red X feedback rectangle there, whereas the student is directed back to the section of the lesson where that information was first introduced. So they can go back and review. Even though they can't re-answer the question, at least they still have the opportunity to learn the material before they move on to the next lesson. So that's what we offer to your students in the form of our fully integrated and engaging laboratory manuals hosted on HOL Cloud. But what do we offer you, the educator, to improve your experience when using our materials? Well, first and foremost, we offer an integrated gradebook function on our laboratory platform. And with this gradebook function, you have the ability not only to view each student's progress and grades, but also assign point values to every question, whether it be the interactive multiple choice and drag and drop type questions, or those open-ended discussion questions at the end of each procedure. Now, anything that provides the student with immediate feedback on the platform is auto-graded. So that takes the grading pressure off of you, the instructor. In fact, the only questions or parts of a lesson you need to grade manually are the data tables and the open-ended questions. And then you will assign those a percentage value or just a total point value, and then HOL Cloud will actually convert that to a percentage for you and your students to view once grading is complete. And here you see an example of that. So how do you grade those portions that you have to grade on your own? Well, we provide you with a fully integrated instructor answer key. And so when you click on a particular question to grade it, it pulls up, or a data table, it pulls up what we have recorded from conducting the experiments in-house, or what we consider to be the ideal answers to those open-ended questions. You see those immediately beside the student response, and then you're able, based on your judgment, to assign a point value that they have received for that. You also have the opportunity to provide feedback for your students. So you can type a message and explain to your students why you gave them, you know, half credit for their answer. And then once the student logs back onto HOL Cloud, they can review their grade and any comments that you made to them. Also, and what we're excited to share with you is we've given you the opportunity to supplement all of our content that we host on HOL Cloud. Meaning, if you would like to add additional text to the background section, or the procedures, or additional photographs or diagrams, or even supplemental videos, you are more than welcome to do that. There is no charge to you, the instructor, for hosting that information in conjunction with our curriculum. Anytime you do choose to upload supplemental materials, it will appear in a light beige color highlight in the student's view of the lesson. So their attention is automatically drawn towards it. Here shows another example. You know, this is whole sections in that light beige. So it's an example of you including not only text, but also a diagram. What else have we done to make your life easier as an educator? Well, we've made sure that it's easy LTI integration between HOL Cloud and the major types of learning management systems that most schools use. So whether you use Moodle, Blackboard, Canvas, D2L, or many others, we provide you or your IT team with the code they need to integrate HOL Cloud with your system. That way students have single sign-on, and any grades that have been captured in our Gradebook functionality are ported automatically into the Gradebook that you keep for your class in your LMS. We've also made sure that HOL Cloud is ADA compliant to meet any regulations that your school is expected to maintain. So as of earlier this year, HOL Cloud is the only WCAG 2.0 ADA compliant educational platform to offer access to students with disabilities. And then lastly, we provide you with a whole litany of analytics, as Mark and Jim already talked about in a little bit earlier on. So you can view your class's progress, the amount of time spent on the lesson, and the grades that each individual has been assigned until that particular moment in time. And then lastly, and certainly not leastly, we're here to support both you and your students. We have operators. We have a dedicated support staff, and also we can reply via email to solve both IT problems that students may be having, or just questions in general about any material, physical materials they've been shipped. But we're here to support you and ensure the success of your program. That concludes my portion of today's presentation. We certainly want to open up the floor to questions, whether it be about what you've just seen now or what Mark and Jim presented earlier on. We're happy to spend as much time as necessary. So I'll turn this back over to Lee right now, and she can share any questions that you've posed along the way.
Thank you, Dwayne. Dwayne, Pablo asked if you could give us a little bit of detail on the kit cost. He's asked specifically about the bio kit, but if you could give us a little detail, that would be great.
Sure. You know, our kits are customized, so the overall cost is really going to be dependent upon how many lessons and the types of materials that any given lesson requires. Having said that, in general, most of our disciplines for, you know, a full semester's worth of lessons, the kits are going to start around $100 and go up. You know, I mean, we have had schools design kits you know, as much as $400 if they had even more lessons or multiple lessons that required quite a bit of equipment. But really, our sales staff works with each institution to tailor a kit and the materials not only to your curriculum needs, but also your cost threshold. So really, we're flexible and in general can accommodate whatever needs you require.
Along those same lines, John asked if, do the students return the equipment at the end of the semester, or are they keeping it?
No. So the students can keep it. So there's two types of items that are included in our kits. There's what we call durable materials, such as the microscopes that Jim shared some photos of our microscope with you, like that skeleton model that you may have seen that's 3 feet tall, and various glassware. So that stuff is for the student to keep or to hand down to their children at some time in the future, or even donate to their local school if they'd like to do that. However, in most kits, more than 50% of the materials in the kit are used up during the experimentation process, be they chemicals, dissection specimens, various types of media for microbiology, and things such as that. So even in a best case scenario, less than 50% of the materials that were shipped out in the kit are still viable at the end of the teaching term. So no, they are the students to keep or donate or use however in the future as they see fit.
This is Jim Brown. Can I jump in here? Can you hear me?
Absolutely, Jim, go ahead.
Okay, just to give you, a little bit examples on that, the human biology kit that we use for CUNY, what's cool, we got that for $120, and we had a textbook we were using that was $220, and what was cool is we use now OpenStax Anatomy and Physiology. It's a free textbook, so in that whole process, the students came out ahead. They're actually paying less than they had before. So and now they're getting the hands-on lab as well. The other, what was I wanting to say? I forget, but I'll come back with it. Oh, the microscopes. Oh, I'm sorry, the microscopes. Yeah, they are reusable. We got around 8 to 10 uses out of a microscope before it was ready for the junk pile, which is really cool. So in some schools, if you have someone who can, like cleaning up the microscopes, it's a matter of just taking those little lens cleaning paper that I use for my eyeglasses I buy at Walmart. That does a wonderful job. And you have it, they go through, you clean them all up and you can recycle them. If you have someone there who can do just, it can be a student for a little extra money there, just have them clean up the microscopes when they come back in. And so many schools have done that. Others, it's just a one-shot deal.
Wonderful. This looks like the last question on the list. Is there a resource where we can review a list of labs or an example of the labs that we can view?
Absolutely. Our sales team will be happy to communicate with you. We do have resource sheets for each discipline that gives a brief outline of what the student will experience in the types of procedures they'll perform for each lesson in our library, and we're happy to share that with you as requested.
And the cool thing about that as well is if you want to eliminate a lab or add a lab, it's pretty easy to do. And of course, the cost is adjusted for that. But sometimes you'll decide, I don't want to, it's a very short semester, I don't want to have that lab. Well, you can have it eliminated. It's easy.
I don't see anything else coming up, so I think that will conclude the Q&A portion. Thank you, everybody, for your participation today. Everyone on the webinar will be receiving an email containing a link to a Starbucks gift card. We appreciate you joining us today, so it's our way of saying thank you. And again, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to anybody on the webinar or to your hands-on labs sales executive. And with that, I will wrap us up. Everybody have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Okay.